Hello and welcome to today's Bitrix24 webinar, Total Telephony. Thank you for joining today. Okay, so we'll just go through some introductions. So my name is Sam Connor. I'm part of the sales engineer team here at Interface, and we're a Bitrix24 Gold partner. So we specialize in the Bitrix24 software. So what we can do is help you, first of all, with evaluating the Bitrix24 system. So we can go through your requirements, see if Bitrix24 could be a good fit for what you're trying to achieve. If it is, then we can then help with the implementation. So we can set up Bitrix24 to essentially work how you need to work inside your business. Then if you are looking at the on-premise edition of Bitrix, we can provide you with our own hosting services, and we can provide ongoing dedicated support and admin and end user training to essentially help you get the most value out of the Bitrix24 system. Okay, so today's webinar is Total Telephony. So we're going to be focusing on the telephony functionality inside the Bitrix24 system. But it's important to, first of all, just to understand, if you're new to Bitrix24, what Bitrix24 actually offers as a whole package. So Bitrix24 is a collaboration suite of well in excess now of 35 different tools that you can use to help you to manage your business. There are over 11 million customers now worldwide that use the Bitrix24 system. And the system is available in two different editions. So we have the Bitrix24 Cloud and the Bitrix24 self-hosted solution. Now, in today's webinar, when we're looking at telephony, really all the functionality we're going to see today, it's available on both editions. If there is anything that is specifically, say, on the self-hosted, we will make you aware of that. But essentially, yes, in terms of telephony, it is available on both the cloud and self-hosted solutions. In terms of pricing for the licenses, so prices start from around $49 per month for a cloud-based system, or for a self-hosted system that starts with the 50 user edition. The business 50 is priced at $2,990. And in terms of that, you do need to budget in year 2 and ongoing annually for the renewal of that license to maintain updates and features to your on-premise system. Okay, so let's look there at what Bitrix24 is as a whole. But now let's move on to really focus down onto our Total Telephony webinar. So today we're going to be looking at how we can integrate telephone calls into our Bitrix24 system, and then also how we can make outbound calls. We'll look at reporting and really look at how the different ways we could connect calls into the system. So we're going to look at how we can use the Bitrix telephony, and also how you could also use your own telephony features and providers directly inside the Bitrix24 system. But it's important to understand actually why you should use Bitrix24 for your telephony requirements. So first of all, Bitrix has a built-in phone system. So essentially, almost straight out of the box, you could start to use the renting of a Bitrix24 number to make outbound calls and receive calls. So it's very fast to set up. It's also possible to integrate your existing PBX into Bitrix24. So we'll see later on some of the reasons why you might want to do that. It is possible to connect your existing PBX into Bitrix. A really important piece of functionality is how it can integrate with the CRM system. And we'll take a look at how we can see all of the calls that we have with our clients, how we can quickly call directly from the CRM system and see when an inbound call is routed to specific people, so it can go to the correct person in the business based on who is actually managing that client inside the CRM system. We've also got really robust reporting in the telephony module, which we'll take a look at later, so we can really analyze how our team is performing in terms of answering calls, how long they're on those calls for, and also actually how often calls are coming into our Bitrix24 system. So that can be used for scheduling purposes. Another key benefit as well is actually how low cost this can be to start up. In terms of renting a Bitrix number, which we'll look at shortly, that can cost as little as $4 per month. So you have a very low setup cost for using Bitrix24 Telephony. Okay, and what we'll now go into is actually a bit more detail as to those different ways that we can connect our telephone instances into the Bitrix24 system. And essentially, we have two different options. Okay, so first of all, we have Bitrix Telephony. So this is the first option that we'll take a look at. This is essentially where we rent a number directly from Bitrix24 that is then connected into our Bitrix24 system. The second option is integrations. So this is either connecting your PBX into Bitrix, it's connecting your existing phone provider externally into the Bitrix24 system. So we're going to have a look at the different ways that we could actually manage through an integration to feed your existing phone numbers into Bitrix24 as well. So that's just to be clear, really those are the two options in terms of telephony into Bitrix24. So first of all, we're going to look at option 1, which is Bitrix Telephony. So let's now just go into our Bitrix24 system. And if you're completely new to Bitrix and you want to understand where you go to actually access the telephony module, then if we just go onto the left-hand side here, then we can hover down here to the telephony module, and we just want to click into there. And this will open up the telephony module in Bitrix24. Okay, so now we're inside here. What we want to do first of all is, because we're looking at the first option, which is Bitrix24 Telephony, let's take a look at actually how we can start to proceed with that option. So Bitrix Telephony is the ability to rent a number directly from Bitrix24 that will then be added into your Bitrix24 system. So you can see in our telephony module here, you can see under my numbers, we have a number here that we have rented from Bitrix24, and I can see the monthly fee that we're being charged to rent that number. So if you're wanting to rent a number and use Bitrix24 Telephony, we need to go to the blue badge here, which is the rent a number, and we want to click on that button there. This will now open up the page where we can select the country that we would want to rent a number for. So for example, if I was to choose the UK here, I can click into the UK. And that now opens up the options here. So I can actually go a bit granular actually from the country. I can then select the type of number that I would want to select. So it could be, for example, a local number. And then I could select the region that I want to rent this number for. Okay. And we can see that's going to cost approximately $6 per month to rent that number. But let's say if we went to the USA, then I might want to select a toll-free number, for example, and then I could select the category for my toll-free number. And this is going to cost, again, $6 per month. Now, obviously, with a toll-free number, you're going to have to accept the cost for any inbound call on the toll-free number. So you can see the different types of numbers that you can select from. Now, just as a word of warning, on specific countries, you do need to remember that there could be an additional connection cost based on the country. So just check here. So as you can see, if we're going to rent a number in Germany, there is above the monthly renting of the number charge, there is also a one-time connection cost as well. And also, if we're going to use a German number here, you also need to upload valid postal address to show that you have a resident address inside that country that you're wanting to rent the number for. So that's not for every country, but there are countries in here that you will need to provide postal address identification to actually have that number authorized inside your Bitrix24 system. So to do that, you would simply go to the upload verification documentation here, and then that would get processed by Bitrix24, usually within a day or so once you've uploaded that verification. So that's how we can select and rent a number directly inside Bitrix24. It's very quick, and once we have added that number, we then need to add a balance to our Bitrix24 number. So you go into here and top up your balance. That will open up the billing area where you can then top up your balance inside the system. And you need that balance to then be able to make outbound calls and to receive calls inside the system. So if you ever get to a point where you find you're not able to make calls, I would always recommend just coming back to your telephony page here, checking the current balance to make sure you have enough credit inside your Bitrix24 system. Now, in terms of, we've mentioned how the cost for the number is around $6 per month. Included in that is all the inbound calls to that number. So all inbound calls are free of charge to you. They're included with the rental of the number. Outbound calls are charged per minute based on the country that you're calling to. So we have the price list here, which shows based on the different countries what that cost would be per minute in USD for the outbound call. So I'm just going to add this into the chat on Zoom so you can access that inside the system. And we'll also add that to the YouTube recording as well. So it's just important to bear in mind there are these different costs that you need to budget for if you are going to rent a number. Okay. Now, once we've rented that number, we can then actually set up essentially a virtual phone system directly inside Bitrix24. So we can see here my number. Now, you can rent multiple numbers. You could have as many numbers inside here as you require. But one thing to point out is you can't, using Bitrix24 Telephony, you can't use your own existing number. When you rent a number from Bitrix, that is going to be a completely brand new number inside the Bitrix24 system. So please do bear that in mind. If it's critical that you need to keep your existing number, then we need to look at option 2, which is the integration piece that we're going to look at later on in today's webinar. But if you're happy to have a new number, then using the Bitrix24 Telephony is a really good option. So we can see the number that we've rented inside the system here. So what we can configure now is the actual setup of that number inside the system. So first of all, we can go into our number here and configure the inbound call routing. So first of all, we might want to select actually where this call can go to inside our system. So you can see here, we can set up queue groups. So if I go into the settings here, what I could do is I could create a specific group, which is going to be a segment really of people within our business that I am wanting the call to be routed to. So let's say, for example, inside here, I'm going to give this group a specific name. So let's just call this technical support. So if a customer calls up and they need technical support, we could have a group of employees who actually that call could be routed to inside the system. So now I can select from our Bitrix user base, the team here who are going to be part of the technical support group. So if the customer, which I'm going to show you in a second, on the IVR menu selects the option which is for technical support, then that inbound call is going to be routed to this specific group of people. So they can then answer that call and deal with the client's specific question. So I've got that group and I can then distribute calls. So I could say I'm going to go evenly across the team, or it could go to each individual person one time at a go based on the number of rings. So there's different ways you can configure how that call is then routed to your queue there in the system. So I've selected and set up my different groups, and then I can set up my voice menu. So this is essentially an IVR menu. So when a client calls in, we can have a pre-recorded message that gets submitted to your client, and then we can give them options that they can select from to have the call routed to specific people in our Bitrix24 system. So let's create a new menu, and let's go into that menu in the system. So first of all, what I want to do is set up the different options for when that person calls into the system. So let's say if option 1, I'm going to select here, there's different options. So it could be the call could be forwarded to a certain employee. It could go to a group of people. So that's what I want to do. So I'm going to say if we select option 1, we're going to be routed to the sales team. And if we select option 2, we're going to be sent to the technical support team. And if we select option 3, then we could, for example, let them leave a voicemail, for example. Okay. So these are the different options then that we could set up. So we're giving the customer the choice of where they want that call to be routed inside the business. And what we can do is we can set up that message to be relayed to the client so they are aware of how the call routing will work. So inside here, I can type out the options. Okay, so we've typed out that message, and we can then decide actually what language we want to use for that message to be relayed to the customer. And we can choose the speed and the volume as well. Or another option is you could upload an audio file. So if you actually want to record this message yourself, then you could upload your own audio file. So now when the client calls in, they're going to have this message, they're going to be spoken to, and press 1 to speak with sales, press 2 to speak with technical support, or press 3 to leave a voicemail. And that is based on this IVR menu that we have set up. And then that call would then be routed. So we can see based on if they select option 2, we saw the people that we added to the technical support queue. And that is the group of people now that the call would be automatically routed to inside the system. So it can just save you significant amounts of time. If you have a lot of inbound calls, you can set up your voice menu so the calls are distributed to the relevant area of your business at the correct time. And that will improve your customer service among your clients. In terms of other setups we can do for the phone number as well, first of all, we've got CRM integration. So if a call comes into our system and the call number is not recognized, we could automatically create a new lead inside the CRM system. We can also record calls. So here we have the ability to turn on recording of calls directly inside the CRM system. I would always recommend ticking this button as well. So if an inbound call comes into Bitrix and you are recording calls, you can play a recorded warning message to the client, warning them that their call is going to be recorded inside the system. We can also set up working hours. So there may be specific time periods where you have your team accessible to be able to answer calls directly inside the system here. So any out of hours periods. So what we could do is say Saturday and Sunday are the days off. And then what we can do is we can set up an out of hours voicemail service, or we can maybe have the call forwarded to a specific number if we've got an out of office person who is able to answer those calls out of office. And then we could also set up some additional functionality such as hold music as well. So when your client's on hold, you may want to give them a welcome message or specific music inside the system. So you can see there's a huge variety of settings that we can then set up on our telephone number that we've rented inside the Bitrix24 system. Now, obviously, those settings are quite important to get right, and you don't really want everyone inside your team to be able to customize those rules. So what we can do is we can set up access permissions in the telephony module. So here we can set up different roles inside the system. And then based on those roles, what we can do is, for example, telephony settings, we could give full access to some, but then we could also deny access to other people based on that role that we assign to them. So we do get that question a lot. So you don't need to be concerned about who could configure those settings so we can deny access for the majority of people inside your Bitrix24 system, so they can't configure any telephony settings that you are building inside your system. Okay, so I just want to check if we have any questions before we move on to actually look at this CRM integration in more detail. And what we can also look at is actually, first of all, how the display looks when a client from the CRM system calls in. So you can see here, a client is calling in from the CRM that we have their details of, and it pops up like so, and I can answer that call, I can transfer that call, and that integration is directly from the integration settings we've built on this number. So from there, that call can automatically feed in as a pop-up display that we can answer. You can also answer that call directly from the Bitrix24 mobile app as well. So it's very simple to answer those calls inside your Bitrix24 system. And let's go into the CRM system and just go into our contact database. So we've seen there when a client, where we have their details stored in the CRM system, it pops up with their details when they make an inbound call to us. But what we can also do is we can see the entire history of all of those call recordings inside our contact pages. So inside here in the CRM, we can see a client's CRM record, and you can see all the different calls that have taken place with this client. And what we can do is we can see the history, and I can play those calls back, so I can actually just familiarize myself with actually what that conversation was if I'm going to speak with them again.
Hello.
Okay, so you can see that call recording in the system, and we can also click to call directly from the contact page as well. Okay, so you have direct access to make those calls inside the system. I can see a few questions are coming in, which is fantastic. What we'll do in just a second, we'll go to the interval of the webinar and we'll run through those questions. So keep adding your questions into the question box on Zoom, and we'll run through those just in a few minutes, okay? Now that's how we can see all of the calls inside the system. Another way you could actually use telephony and the CRM system, and we see this a lot for our call center clients, is you could set up call lists. So for example, you could use the segmented information inside your CRM system. So here, for example, I might want to just filter down to all of our clients based on location type. So in here, we've got a location segment field. So I might want to drill down to all of our contacts in New York. So I can see that list here now. And then what I could do is I could start dialing specifically on that list inside the system. So you can start to create your own call list directly from the data that's inside your CRM system. And a really useful way to do this is saying leads. So you could have a group of maybe activity leads where you want your sales reps to actually call specific groups of leads inside the system. So inside here, again, I could segment and I could filter down maybe on specific leads. And then if I select the action block here, what we can do is I could create a call list. And so this is now I can save this list inside the system here for our team to action. So let's save this call list for tomorrow. And then I'm going to assign it to a specific sales rep. And I'm going to give a description as well. Okay, and I'm going to assign this to a specific sales rep inside the system here. So that's going to be Dev White's call list for tomorrow. I've added it to his calendar, and now they'd be notified with that call list inside the system. And they can now start calling through that group of leads directly inside the system. Okay, so let's just go through some of the questions that we have been added in. Okay, how are the calls routed? So Bitrix24 desktop and app. So in terms of call routing, it depends how you set this up inside your telephony system. So it's probably best if we set up a separate meeting with you to discuss the setup that you require. In terms of call routing inside the system here, if we just go back into the configuration, then what we can do is, first of all, the calls can be routed based on, say, the queue groups. So you can decide actually who those calls are routed to. And the call can also then be routed to the mobile application as well. Okay, I think another question just to follow up on there. Curious about the quality. I presume it's VoIP. Yes, it is VoIP, yeah. Can you forward to mobile numbers? So you can forward to the mobile app. I will have to check on if it can be forwarded to a specific number. So I will get an answer to you on that because I can't see the answer inside here right now. So I'll get an answer to you. Okay, I imagine returning calls via Bitrix will incur a cost. Most UK mobile accounts come with unlimited calls. How can this be leveraged without revealing? So I'm not too sure on that. I mean, in terms of call costs, if you're renting a Bitrix24 number, the inbound call is free of charge. So that's included with the cost of actually renting the number. To make outbound calls, then this is the cost that you would incur. So you would pay per minute based on the country that you're calling to. So if you're going to use Bitrix telephony, these are the call rates for the outbound calls. Now, in a second, we're going to look at the second option, which is integration. So this is where you can integrate your existing phone providers into the system, and whatever the contracts that you have with them for inbound and outbound calls, that's no different. So you wouldn't then be charged an additional rate by Bitrix if you are going to use the integration option. And the question there is, do I have to pay for a SIP connector to use Bitrix native telephony? No. So the SIP connector is only if you're going to rent an Office PBX or the Cloud PBX integration tool. So if you wanted to, say, connect your Cloud PBX, you would have to rent the SIP connector, which costs $49 per month. If you're happy to use the Bitrix renting of a number, where you simply go into here, select your country, and then you rent a number, then this is completely separate to the SIP connector. You don't need the SIP connector. You would just pay the monthly fee to actually rent the number inside the system like so. Okay, so the caller line identity question, I'm not too sure. So I'll add our details into the webinar at the end. And what we can do is we can set up a call with you to discuss your requirements in some more detail there. Okay. Okay, so that's a look at the option to actually rent a number directly inside Bitrix24 using Bitrix telephony. The second option is integrations. And really, this is the option if you're wanting to connect your existing phone lines into Bitrix24. It could be you've got a really good competitive contract with your existing phone provider and you don't want to lose that contract. Or maybe there's specific functionality that you get with your current phone provider, so you don't want to move to renting a new number from Bitrix24. That's where you may want to actually use the integration features. And there's a few different ways that we can actually manage an integration inside the Bitrix24 system. So let's take a look at how that could be managed inside the system here. So we're back to the same page in our telephony module. But the first way we can manage integrations is if you have an Office or a Cloud PBX. So PBX is a private branch exchange. So what we can do is selecting either of these options, depending on what your PBX is. The first thing we can do is we can connect that PBX into the system. So what you would do, and it's the same for both the Office or the Cloud PBX, you go to the top right-hand corner here and click on the Connect button. It will then open up a form, and on here we would then enter the credentials that you have for your PBX. and save that information inside the system. What you can then do is you can test for 60 minutes that connection to check that the connection has worked correctly. So you have 60 minutes to configure and test outbound calls to check that your cloud PBX has connected successfully. Once that's done, what you can then do is you can then purchase the SIP connector. Now, this would cost $49 per month as a connector fee to connect your PBX into the Bitrix24 system. But above that, Bitrix24 don't charge you any additional amount for inbound calls, for outbound calls. You just continue with the existing rate that you have contracted with your phone provider. So that's how we could connect a cloud PBX. And again, it's very similar for the Office PBX. The only difference is the credentials, essentially, that you would be entering into the system here. So that's one option, is if you have your PBX, you could use the SIP connector to connect into the Bitrix24 system. The second option is to check the marketplace inside Bitrix24. So the marketplace is essentially many different third-party applications that integrate into the Bitrix24 system. So here we can see the different telephone providers that have integrations directly with Bitrix24. So if you are with one of these phone providers, and I'd probably check this first of all, is check to see if your phone provider is here and see if you have the necessary credentials and functionality on your plan to use their integration. So for example, here, a very popular one is the RingCentral telephony integrator. This would allow you to connect your RingCentral numbers with Bitrix24. So you wouldn't need to use the SIP connector because we have the application here. Now, one thing to point out is you do need to check that you have the correct commercial subscription. So in terms of Bitrix24, you can't have the free Bitrix account. You have to have a commercial subscription. And in terms of the RingCentral plan, you have to have a premium or an enterprise RingCentral plan to be able to use this application. So it's important to check you meet all of the necessary criteria to be able to use that application. But if you do, then fantastic. So you could install this onto your Bitrix24 system and your phone numbers can then connect into the platform. That's really the second way in terms of integration, is using the marketplace features to connect into your Bitrix24 system, which will then feed your lines into the system. And really what the third way you could connect is really using the API. And this would be where the self-hosted edition of Bitrix24 would come into play, because we would need access to the full API on the system. So if the Office PBX or the Cloud PBX is not an option, if the Marketplace apps is not an option, we could look to use the Bitrix API to actually develop an integration with your phone system. And that, just in terms of a word of warning, that could be anywhere in the region of $10,000 to $15,000 for development of that. And we can walk you through the options that we have with our technical team to actually build you a bespoke integration with your phone applications as well. So that is the second way of using telephonies, using the integration tools available inside the Bitrix24 system. Okay, so let's just see if we have any other questions right now. We did have a question earlier on in the week regarding the number of rented numbers that you can rent from Bitrix24. And we did answer that earlier on, actually. So there is no limit to the number of Bitrix24 numbers that you can rent inside their system. Obviously, you would have to pay for each number. There is no economies of scale on that. Each number is completely separate, so you would pay the monthly fee to rent those numbers. Okay, so we have covered costs quite a lot in today's webinar, but just to cover those at a higher level now. So We've mentioned already in terms of Bitrix24 telephony, the call rates. So first of all, if you're going to rent a Bitrix24 number, the cost is going to be somewhere around $4 to $6 per month for each and every number that you rent inside the system. All inbound calls are included in those call rates, and outbound calls are charged per minute based on the country you're calling to. And we've added those call rates into the chat box for you on the Zoom channel, and we'll also add those into the YouTube video recording as well. If you're going to use the PBX, so if you wanted to connect your cloud or Office PBX, you would have to purchase the Bitrix24 SIP connector. And that would cost you $49 per month to rent that SIP connector. And then you would just pay whatever you are contracted with your phone provider for inbound and outbound calls. That would just continue as standard. And then the other option in terms of costings that we've just mentioned is a bespoke integration, which could cost anywhere between $15,000 to $20,000, depending on the scale of the integration you require. Okay, I can just see a few more questions that have come in. Okay, can you pay for a bespoke custom number from Bitrix? So unfortunately, you can't do no. So you can't request a specific number from Bitrix24. So let's just, you say you can't see the call rates. So let me just add the call rates back into the chat. So yeah, we'll just go back into the telephony area again, just so we can see how we rent those numbers. But I'm just going to add the call rates back into the chat channel. So they are back in the channel there now for you. Okay, so we'll just add the call rates into the chat window for everyone. We'll just go back into the telephony module again. So when you rent a number, yeah, unfortunately, you can't kind of predefine the number or request a type, the whole number from Bitrix. The only thing you can do is, let's say if we were to choose a local, you could choose then the region that you want to select from. So you can choose the predefined prefix essentially, but the total number you're not able to try and request from Bitrix. It is all randomized, I'm afraid. Okay, another question is coming. I can make back-to-back calls like VisiDial for a call center company. I'm not sure what you mean by VisiDial, but if you mean back-to-back calls, if I go into the CRM system, if you could answer, I'm not sure, do you mean kind of an automated dialer system? Is that what you're referring to there? I wouldn't say Bitrix is an automatic dialer system, because when I start to dial, say if I've got a group of leads in the system here, I could start dialing, but then I have to click to call, and then I have to select the next to call the next person. So I couldn't call that an automatic dialer system. You do have to press a button to then make the next call. Okay, so I wouldn't call it an automated back-to-back caller system, but essentially it is a partial dialer system. You can select the types of leads you want to call, and that can then create a call list that you can then start calling through on the application. Okay, so moving on, we just briefly looked here now at reporting. So let's go into the reporting functionality inside the telephony module. So inside the telephony area, first of all, you have a call details tab. So if we go into the call details area, this will give you the entire history of every single call, inbound and outbound, inside your Bitrix24 system. And you can also create filters. So you might want to drill down based on an employee, for example, or a call date range. You could drill down into this data. And this data as well, if your calls are recorded, you could play those calls back, you can download those calls, and you can export the data out into Excel. And quite recently, Bitrix have also created their own call statistic dashboard. So actually you can analyze the data from your telephony module. So here, for example, we can look at the call statistics across our team. So I can see how calls have been distributed among our employees. So inbound and outbound, I can see how many calls people have missed, over a specific date range. So you can create different filters on these dashboard reports. You might want to look at actually how busy we are across different time periods. So it could look at, for example, the call density. So actually this is really useful for scheduling purposes. You could start to evaluate actually how busy we are at different time periods across the week, and when I need to have the majority of our staff on the Bitrix system to answer those calls. And we could even look at employee performance. So we can see who's involved in the most calls, who's on calls for the longest duration, or who actually has maybe who's missed the most calls over a specific time period as well. So you could start to actually delve into the analysis of your call history using the call statistics inside your Bitrix24 system. Okay, so I think question coming, the call to UK landline seems to be in a pretty wide range. Yeah, I mean, there is nothing we can do around those call costs, I'm afraid. Those are the rates for renting of a Bitrix24 number. The other option, if it isn't quite price effective for you, is integrating an existing phone number or looking at some of the different phone providers inside, for example, the marketplace. So you could look to investigate if there are maybe better prices using one of the phone providers on the marketplace, so such as RingCentral, 3CX. Maybe just investigate to see if their call rates are maybe more competitively priced, and then use the integrator here to connect those numbers into the system as well. Okay, so let's look at call reporting. So in summary today, we've seen how we can use Bitrix24 as a virtual phone system, how we can feed calls directly into Bitrix and make outbound calls. And then we've seen how that can integrate with the CRM system. So we can have all of those calls recorded directly in the system, and we can create call lists on the application for our sales team. We've seen as well how we can do really robust reporting and build dashboard reports based on the analysis of our inbound and outbound calls. And also, in terms of a summary, it is a low setup cost. We've seen how we can start off on approximately $4 to $6 per month for renting of a Bitrix number. And once you've done that, it's really out of the box, ready to be used inside your Bitrix24 system. So that's all from today's Total Telephony webinar. Thank you for joining today. Here are a selection of our up and coming webinars. We're here every other Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, 4 p.m. UK time. And you can register for our webinars at intraface.com/webinars. So thank you for your time today. If you do have any other questions in the meantime, if you'd like to set up a call with one of our team, please do contact sales@intraface.com. We'll be happy to set up a meeting with you to discuss any requirements in more detail. Okay, thank you for your time today. Bye for now.